Salut, Talofalava. My name is Patricia Naisara. Welcome to the Pacific Way, bringing you stories that matter to Pacific people. Most traditional and cultural ceremonies here in the Pacific will not be complete without a feast, which, at most times, has to include pork and pork products. Imagine a function without it. Well, our pig industry is now under threat, and all efforts are being undertaken to save our bacon.
Livestock, especially pigs, play a vital, traditional and cultural role in the lives of Pacific Islands people. However, African swine fever, or ASF, now poses a real threat to the pork industry in the region.
African swine fever is a deadly viral disease in pigs. It affects all types of pigs, domestic pigs in farms and the wild pigs in the bush in the forests. It does not directly affect humans, so it doesn't have direct consequences on public health, on human public health, but it does have serious socioeconomic impacts. With regards to high mortality rates and loss of production for the pig farmers, and overall it negatively affects the pig industry.
There is no vaccine or treatment for ASF, and its potential to spread rapidly through the region would affect not just commercial but subsistence farmers as well. And now ASF has been detected in the Pacific.
African swine fever was first detected in Mendi, the southern highland province of Papua New Guinea in March 2020. The virus was suspected when a large number of pigs died in February 2020. So samples were taken by the Nagia investigation team and sent to Australia, with the results returning positive.
Importers are expected to be the first to be affected if the threat of ASF increases.
If it did get into Australia, which is the source of most of our imports, normally we supply 70–80% locally and import the rest. If it did get into our colleagues in Australia, would we still import meat products from Australia? Because that's a threat. That's one of the ways it is transmitted, is through meat products.
A concerted effort is being made to raise awareness and prevent ASF from spreading further into the Pacific. The Pacific Community, in partnership with the Pacific Horticultural and Agricultural Market Access Program, or Farmer Plus, is working with partner agencies to train biosecurity and animal health officers throughout the region to improve African swine fever preparedness.
So the theory training for the emergency preparedness workshop for African swine fever is all about learning about the pathogen or the organism that causes the disease itself, the population that it affects, and the transmission pathways, so the overall clinical picture of the disease, and how all these information can help us implement prevention and control measures at the border and on the farms.
The two-day training also provides practical for participants, which includes the proper use of personal protective equipment. Proper protocols and procedures to extract blood samples is also a vital component of the training. Similar training is now being implemented across the Pacific to stop the incursion of ASF. SPC has also partnered with Farmer Plus to develop appropriate training and awareness materials.
SPC and Farmer Plus procured ASF Ingenessa field test kits in collaboration with the PRISCO 19 and MICO 19 projects for 14 Pacific Island countries. Consultations were held with country focal points on their laboratory capacities, and this is to determine the type of test kits that we were to procure for countries. And with the rapid test kits that were procured, the livestock officers and biosecurity officers can take samples in the field and get immediate results, and also send them to accredited labs for confirmation.
In Fiji, livestock officers are now conducting consultations with pig farmers and educating them on ASF detection and prevention. The pig farmers are now taking immediate preventative measures.
Now what I have done is we don't allow any visitors on the farm, first of all. And if some customer comes, and I have a farm worker here, and he is the one who's handling the sale and all, he's going to show you the animal, and so we keep people at distance now.
Strict measures are also being implemented at Vunda Pork, which houses over 4,000 pigs on average.
For this farm, we will have to stop people coming on farm to purchase feed and change our setup so that they don't come anywhere past the office. So close the farm up. Once you're in, you're in. And having the live gate sales in a different area, and the same as the purchasing of the feed down in a different area, so they don't actually come on farm.
Measures are also being implemented at the ports of entry.
2 years back, BAF has taken that precautionary measures with that immediate ban of personal importation of the pork and pork product into Fiji. This decision has been made by BAF to protect Fiji from exotic ASF.
As awareness and outreach programs continue, there is growing confidence that these measures would ensure the region's pork industry will be protected from ASF.
Welcome back. This is the Pacific Way. In this segment, we look back at how simple yet innovative technology is now helping communities in flood-prone areas, like the remote regions of the Solomon Islands.
That is the warning signal helping save lives of villagers in the remotest of communities in the Solomon Islands. The Solomon Islands is prone to cyclones, flash floods and natural disasters. However, in many remote locations, illegal logging exacerbates the problem, causing unprecedented river flooding.
The risk of having these flash floods late at night when everybody's asleep. And then if you look at the characteristics of our settlements, our communities, most of them built around floodplains because that is where food gardens are very fertile. They provide fertile land and they have really good products coming out from their farms, right? So communities are usually located around riverbanks and floodplains. And so it happened in 2010 when we had a full village in northwest Coral Canal got wiped out.
Garanga village in Isabel province, the largest in the Solomons, is one which rates high for risks of flash flooding.
As you can see, the geographical view of this place is just susceptible to natural disasters like flooding because of the massive soil erosion from the logging operation. And so the water level is continuing to rise. And so this is what we are saying that this school is vulnerable to natural disasters.
Preparing warning now, what's taken?
A major challenge for the National Disaster Management Office is communicating warning and emergency messages to the rural communities. The Pacific Community, or SPC's Building Safety and Resilience in the Pacific, or BSRP program, and the Solomon Islands NDMO worked in partnership to find an innovative yet simple solution to overcome the communication gap.
This concept then has been floating around. How do we get the early warning messages to the communities? You know, considering the fact that we don't know how many houses in a village does have transistor radios. So if you use SIBC, the Solomon Island Broadcasting Corporation, as the means to transfer, to disseminate early warning messages, how would you know if they have the radios turned on? You know, so these are the questions that have been going around in our minds. And so this question of the last mile communication is always a challenge for us, has always been a challenge. And so the concept had come up, why don't we bring the last mile to the first mile? So we came up with this really basic, simplified flood gauge.
A piece of wire and some tubing was all that was required. Materials readily available in the Solomon Islands.
This equipment is a very simple equipment. You can source the materials locally. The sensor of this system is installed right at the river bank. And that sensor, when it senses the flooding, it sends out the signal to this alarm, where it's installed at usually a chief's house at the community. And so when this alarm goes, then the chief informs the community that there's a flooding coming.
5 villages in Isabel Island were then identified as high-risk areas. For the Provincial Disaster Management Officer for Isabel Province, who has the responsibility of over 27,000 residents scattered across rugged terrains, the flood warning system is a blessing.
The flood gauges that we install, I think would make these communities more prepared. In the past, there is no flood gauges that were installed, and the warning of the flood, in terms of communication, some of these communities do not have access to mobile coverage or the radio. So these flood gauges are the only means of communicating or giving early warning sign to the communities.
Community consultations were carried out in the 5 villages and focal points appointed to be the eyes and ears on the ground for the NDMO.
Here we have established disaster committees in the villages to look after the flood gauges, as well as to communicate with the office. So most of the villages I established them, they are still working. This committee really helped our office in terms of communicating to the office if there is any flood or if there is any disaster. These are the people who are at the village that could help us with those information or the situation during the incident or the disaster.
BSRP and the NDMO have also provided training for the community focal points on installation and maintenance of the flood gauges. Disaster risk management plans and evacuation strategies have also been developed through the programs. The focal points, along with the NDMO, are required to conduct frequent evacuation drills to ensure the communities are prepared.
This machine, and when it gets sound, it's not really so loud, so we usually use the bell to communicate, especially for those so far from this area. So we use bells, and also the committee have to get to those places where houses were really far from the area where the machine is. The exercise is so very important, and also it's making the people very cooperative in moving when the committee tells them where to go, how to look after each other when the evacuation take place. So I really appreciate the community and also my committee.
Communities are taking ownership in caring for the equipment. They know how important it is.
At the moment, to be honest for you, we feel that we are safe because people who have installed these flood indicators are specialists, and so whenever the water reaches that level, it gives us a warning that we have to escape to higher ground. So it gives us a chance that we are safe.
The newly installed flood gauges ensure that rural and remote communities in the Solomon Islands continue to focus on safety while building resilience to natural disasters.
You know, just at the back of your mind that the people are safe, right? Through this initiative, you know that you've actually enabled people to change their mindset and become the first mile in the usually called last mile communication that we've been talking about all these years.
We hope you've enjoyed the program as we continue to celebrate Pacific people. The Pacific community, as custodians of the Festival of Pacific Arts, which will now be held in 2024, will continue to share cultural and traditional performances from the region. Today, we leave you with a performance from the Guam delegation. Click like and follow us on the Pacific Way Facebook page and the Pacific Way YouTube channel. Until next week, tofa soifua, mahalo and goodbye.